Hey fearsome friends. Things happen in this world that are beyond our comprehension. Here are a few examples. Some instances aren't too bad, but others are just downright scary. So sit back, relax, and get cozy, comfy, warm, because it's time to let your nightmares in. So I just wanted to share my story, because I read a recent post in this sub about a glitch in the woman's bathroom that was really similar to my experience. It happened about 8 years ago when I was in university. I had to leave in the middle of a lecture because I needed to use the bathroom, and the hallways were empty. The closest women's bathroom was in the next building, but this bathroom was extremely old and pretty dingy. As I approached the building, I could clearly see 2 other girls rushing in there. One of them was wearing a pink dress, and the other had jeans and a white shirt, and I remember this clearly because I really had to pee, and knew that this bathroom only had 3 tiny stalls, so I was hoping that there was nobody else already inside, taking up all the toilets. I ran the rest of the way, and upon entering see that 2 of the stalls, of course, were occupied, and the one in the left corner was thankfully empty. As I did my business, I heard the girl from the stall in the other corner curse and cry out that she'd just gotten her period and didn't have a tampon, so she asked if any of us had any she could use. But as I'd rushed out of class, I'd left all my stuff at my desk and had only taken my cell phone and wallet. I told her that I didn't have anything, but perhaps the girl in the centre stall might. I could clearly see her jeans and light brown Mary Jane shoes on the floor, because these stall walls didn't go all the way down. She was tapping her feet on the floor, but she didn't say anything. The other girl could clearly see her too, and begged her to help her out, but there was no response. The period girl started getting pissed, and ranted that women should help each other out, and if the girl in the middle stall didn't have anything, she could just say so. By this point I was done, so the period girl just had to resort to using toilet paper. I came out first though, and my heart then dropped, as I noticed right then that the middle stall door was partly open. Something was definitely off, and I was feeling goosebumps. I gently pushed the door open, and nobody was there. I told the other girl that the stall was empty, and she cursed some more, came out, and froze when she could see it for herself. "What the hell?" she said. I literally just walked into the bathroom with this girl at the same time. I even held the door open for her. She was tapping her feet a few seconds ago. We looked at each other completely spooked at the empty toilet staring back at us. Everything felt horribly off, and we both confirmed that we'd both seen that she was a brunette, had on a white shirt, jeans, and Mary Janes. We were not crazy. We washed our hands in silence and rushed outside, and it immediately felt like we'd walked into another world. We both felt so much better that the sun was shining, and just then it was like nothing had happened at all. We chatted about never using that bathroom again, said our goodbyes and went back to class. This was such a weird experience, and I really truly never went into that bathroom again. I've thought about ways to explain what had happened. Was it a ghost? How could a person that seemed so real just vanish? Part of me has always wondered if this was something like 2 parallel dimensions merging for a brief moment. Or maybe in the other dimension, the girl with the Mary Janes came out of the stall and we were the ones who mysteriously vanished instead. Yesterday, like every other Tuesday, I took my daughter to her gymnastics class. She's 5, and her class starts at 6 p.m. I leave for work at 2:30 to get in the pickup line at her school by 3, and she comes out at 3:15. It takes me a little over an hour to get home because of traffic, which makes it about 4:30 by the time we do. She goes to a Catholic school, so I had to wear a uniform. But because of the type of uniform that it is, I always put leggings on her, the type that covers her feet, not pant leggings. So with that being said, When we get home at 4:30ish, the first thing we do is let my dog out, and I make her a nice light lunch so she can get something in her stomach before she goes to gymnastics. That particular day I made her PB&J and a glass of milk, and she watched TV whilst she ate. I usually do a little pickup around the house for 20 to 30 minutes, then come 5 o'clock, I start getting her outfit ready for gymnastics. We have to leave no later than 5:30 to get there 10 minutes before 6 because of the group stretch. I always get her leotard, some sweatpants, a sweater and a pair of socks, and this time I remember specifically that I gave her socks and one had a hole in it. Then she said, "Hey Daddy, this sock is old. Can you bring me another pair?" So I threw those out and gave her 2 purple socks that had a pink line on the top of them that were from a fresh pack of new socks I'd gotten her at Kohl's. So I tossed them over to her and told her to change quickly so we could head out, and this had been our routine every Tuesday for the past year. She changed, we went to gymnastics, and when we got there she picked her cubby out, then took off her shoes and put them inside. She then took both socks off, putting one sock in each shoe, then took her sweats and sweater off and did the same, putting them in the cubby on top of her shoes. I tied her hair back, and she went into class to start stretching, and I headed over to the seating area to watch her for the next hour. When class was about to finish, I walked back to the cubby area where I always meet her when she's finished, and when she came over, she passed me her water bottle and went over to her cubby to start putting on her socks, shoes, sweatpants, and sweater back to leave. However, when I looked over at her, she was looking for something. She ran over to me to tell me she couldn't find one of her socks, and I said it was okay and not to worry about it. One of the kids had probably accidentally grabbed it. So then we had a laugh because I said, "Hey, somebody stole your sock. There must be a sock bandit around here." We both found it pretty hilarious, if for some crazy reason someone would have stolen her sock. I found it funny because she still put the one sock on even though she was missing the other and wore one shoe without a sock. Anyway, we went about the evening and stopped for a Happy Meal on the way home. She ate it up, then I got her showered and we lay down to go to bed. Here's where things became odd. I got up at 4 a.m. to take a piss. I used the same bathroom she'd showered in, and every time she bathes I clean up in the bathroom because we all know kids are messy. And after my piss I went to wash my hands. But just before I turned the water on, I looked over, and right there on the corner of the sink was her purple sock. I had a weird instinct to check the dirty laundry basket to see if she'd thrown the one sock she'd had on in there whilst she was getting ready to shower, and sure enough it was. The second sock had somehow appeared. I checked the brand new pack I'd grabbed it from to see if maybe there were multiples of the same colour, but there weren't. The rest were either grey, pink, white, blue or turquoise. It's been in the back of my mind all day. So in December 2020, our cat had 5 kittens, and we kept 2 of them. A black one that we named Lucy, and a grey one called Smokey. We couldn't book the mama in to get fixed due to COVID, so she got pregnant again, and gave birth to a second litter of kittens in January 2022. There were 4 black ones and a grey one. In February, Lucy sadly got run over in our street and passed away. Then 2 weeks later, one of the black kittens also passed away at only 4 weeks old. This left us with Smokey, Mama, 3 black kittens and a grey one. So we decided to keep a kitten as a friend for Smokey, as he'd lost his sister, so we chose the grey one. I then found homes for the other 3 kittens at 10 weeks old. But here's the glitch. The day after the kittens went to their new homes, my partner and I were about to head out camping, and as we went to get in the car, a black kitten, same size, age, colour and markings, came running out from under the car. It ran up to me meowing and purring, so I picked it up and took it inside to clean it up, as it had weepy eyes. We figured one of our precious kittens had been dumped back at our house, but I contacted the new owners, and they all still had their kittens. To this day we can't figure out where on earth he came from, but he is the friendliest cat I've ever met. We planned to rehome him, but it just seems like he chose us on purpose, and I love him too much to let him go. His personality is so much like Lucy's too, and we'd never intended on keeping Lucy either, but it was the same deal there. She was way too friendly and loving for me to give away. This happened a couple of months ago when there was an old lady that sat close to the entrance of a huge mall near my home, selling different types of candy. She seemed very poor and fragile, and was at least 80 years old, and in the multiple times I would pass by her, my heart would always break a little. I would want to buy some candy from her to help out, but now we live in the world of credit cards. I would never have any change with me. One time I even expressed this feeling of regret to my girlfriend when we went to watch a movie in that mall, and she said she felt the same, that she would picture her grandmother in a situation like that and feel sad too. Then a couple of months ago, I was going to the mall to buy some cooking utensils with my mother, who was visiting me at the time, and I saw the old lady again, selling her candy. I passed by, but when we were almost at the store, I remembered that this time I had a bunch of coins and a couple of dollars in my wallet, so I went back. I showed her all the money I had on me and asked how much candy I could buy with it. I got a pack of Mentos and 4 pieces of bubble gum, and I showed her the candy and asked if that amount was okay. She had her eyes barely open. Her voice was low and raspy, but she smiled a little and said something like, "Yes, son, don't worry, God bless." And I went back to join my mum, feeling a little better. Now, ever since I was little, I've loved candy. My grandma would buy boxes of the stuff, and had to hide it so I wouldn't eat it all in a day, especially gum, as I go through it really fast. So in about 10 minutes I was done with all the 4 pieces of bubble gum, then reached into my pocket to start eating the Mentos. But when I took my hand out of my pocket, there were 4 additional pieces of bubble gum in my hand on top of the box of Mentos. We were walking through the store, and I stopped in my tracks. I explained what had happened to my mum, but she just laughed and dismissed me. But I distinctly remember counting all the candy to make sure I wouldn't take more than my money's worth, and even showing it to the old lady. It's very minor, especially compared to the other stories in this sub, but it made me feel nice, and I think about it a lot. It makes me feel a little curious and good. I never saw the old lady sitting there again. So I often hear people and things that aren't there. Nothing major. Maybe a reflection of a car passing that actually didn't. Or I'd hear the sound of someone walking behind me, but there's no one there. I'm pretty used to it now. But this one time, I was coming back home from school, when I was in the 2nd year of high school, and on my way I was taking in everything around as usual. It was a super sunny day, the birds were chirping, and you could hear nature all around. I came to the end of an alley where I had to cross a road, where there isn't an actual crosswalk, so I have to be careful when going over. The place where I needed to cross is somewhere by the end of a huge hill, so I always look up in case a car just rushes through without looking at the road. But as I started walking, since there were no cars, everything went super silent. No birds, no nature sounds, nothing. When I was about halfway across, I suddenly heard a loud car sound on the top of the hill, and it was coming really fast down at me. I started running, and thankfully he passed right by me. I turned to look at the maniac that almost hit me, and the road at the end of the hill is pretty long, so you think he'd just go rushing down it. But when I turned in that same split second, he wasn't there. The loud noise had gone, as if nothing had been there at all. But at the same time, everything had gone back to normal. with birds chirping and nature sounds. It was like when I was on that road, I wasn't actually where I was supposed to be. This one incident had stuck with me because it was kind of almost a close death experience, and I could never understand it. Why me in that time? And what does it mean? What did I actually witness? For those who want to know, the car was a rusty old model. It was brown and it looked like a 1980s Volkswagen, but not exactly. It had more of an elongated front. Has anyone had a similar experience like this? To this day, I still can't explain this. And before I'd start, I'd like to clarify that at the time of this event, my area was experiencing heavy rain and flooding. I just stopped by a friend's house after work for a catch-up, and I was there after dark when a violent storm started blowing in. Knowing the current situation, I decided to leave before the roads closed up again. So instead of going down the highway, I took the back roads, which cut through thick bushland. Stupid, I know. Driving along, I really had to pee, so I found a spot and stopped, and put my hazards and high beams on to make sure traffic would see me from both directions, as my car is hard to see at night. This is relevant for later. I then pulled my jacket on and went off into the trees on the side of the road. The rain was pounding, the wind was gale force, and the lightning and thunder were just insane. I realized the storm was getting worse, so I finished up and hurried back to my car to surprisingly find it gone. Now, like I said, my car is hard to see, so I looked around thinking I'd become disorientated by the storm, but I realized I couldn't see the glow of my lights anywhere or hear the stereo blasting. Immediately I panicked, thinking I'd been carjacked in the middle of nowhere, so I started walking around, hoping to God I'd just walked too far. But no, my car was gone. The storm was setting in by now, and I started getting terrified because there was absolutely no shelter out there at all. I decided to call my dad to come get me, turned against the rain to find his number, and I was shaken by a deafening crack of thunder. I then heard a familiar doof-doof sound, and turned around to find my car, with the lights on, hazards blazing, and exactly where I'd parked it. I still don't know what happened that night, but I booked it out of there quick smart after that event. I still don't understand what happened. I don't drink or do drugs or take any medications. I don't ever have any hallucinations either. A few weeks ago I was in the kitchen when suddenly I heard some guy say in a very loud voice, "Hey! Hi! Hello!" I looked around but there was no one there, and I couldn't find the source of the voice. I thought it was my uncle, but the voice didn't stop. He then told me to just turn off the light. I just stood there confused as to who this person was, when he told me again to turn off the light. I didn't do a thing and the voice stopped. Then I just went back to my room. Now our neighbour's house is very close to us, so we can hear their voices all the time, but it sounded like there was someone literally in the kitchen. Our kitchen only has one window to the outside that is near the ceiling, but if someone were to peek into it, they would have to climb to the roof of our house because it's on the second floor. Wouldn't it be weird for someone to climb on the roof of someone's house and tell them to turn off the lights? It could have been my neighbours, but I know their voices. My mum was in the other room and was sleeping and didn't hear anything. Another thing is that it was past 10 p.m, but the most likely explanation is that the voice was coming from my neighbour's home. I'm still so confused as to what happened, and I haven't experienced anything like this before or since. I have a story to tell that I still have no explanation for. I believe it must have taken place before 2010, and whilst my family, consisting of my older sister, my mum and I, were planning for Easter, something strange occurred. We were talking, and I think were decorating or mentioning going somewhere. But after that, it's all a blur. As if immediately after it had struck 4 or 5 p.m, the entire household just paused, then time sped up. I asked my mum once I'd woken up what had just happened, and had we fallen asleep, because it felt like we had for 2 days. But here's the thing. No one was tired, seeming to have been anywhere or done anything. My only logical explanation is that we'd fallen asleep during Easter, but neither my mum or sister could explain it, and they acted like it was a normal day and Easter hadn't happened, that it didn't exist. All of our decorations and eggs had vanished. It was almost like the two had gone somewhere without me. But that couldn't have been true, because they were both in their rooms asleep. At least that's what I remember. And it still freaks me out, because once again, it really feels like we'd all just gone and all of our preparations had disappeared. All I can clarify is that we lived in somewhere in Texas in an upstairs apartment. But again, it's been more than a decade, and I'm still stuck on this. Whilst typing this, it feels like the memory of it is more and more fading away, but I distinctly remember the apartment gate that would open and shut, and how it had rained a lot that week. I know we didn't eat anything during our sleep, and of course they wouldn't have just left me alone. Does anyone know what happened here? So this happened a few years ago, when I was driving back from college. I live in the Fenlands in UK, and anyone who knows this area knows roads are limited. I was driving towards Ely at the Sutton roundabout, and I lived in the countryside where there was really only one way to get to my house from where I was coming from, and it was the way I was going. It was rush hour and I was bored, stuck in slow-moving traffic, looking around at the other side of the road, when I spotted my dad's car driving in the opposite direction. His car was a bright blue Citroen Picasso that he'd gotten when they'd first come out, and there weren't many of these cars in the area, so it caught my eye. Not to mention his number plate ended with HAHA. I looked at the number plates first, and sure enough, there it was. Ha ha. Surprised, I looked up, and there they were, my parents, both looking really angry. I waved to get their attention, wondering what was going on, and they didn't look at me. They just carried on looking straight forward. I was a bit concerned with this, and the fact they hadn't noticed I was sitting only a few cars in front of them, not to mention I was easy to spot, as I myself had a bright orange Corsa at the time, which is not hard to miss, and a very rare colour for any car. So usually people who knew me noticed my car before I saw them. I couldn't really stop the traffic moving, and I couldn't turn around. As I said, the road was packed and there were no safe places to pull over. From my direction, I was about 10 minutes from home, so I thought it just best to carry on home, then ring Mum's phone as she wasn't driving, to see what was going on. I sort of raced home once I'd gotten off the main road, onto the back lanes, and arrived at our driveway, which is quite a long winding route, with huge bushes on either side, so you couldn't really see our drive or house from the angle of the road. As I drove up the drive, though, I was shocked to see my dad's car sitting front and centre of the drive, in its usual place. Confused, I parked up and ran into the house to find my dad and Mum sitting in the living room. I asked them what was wrong, forgetting there was no way they'd gotten home before me, and they both looked completely perplexed, saying nothing. I asked how they'd gotten home before me, and they said they hadn't left the house all day, as Dad hadn't been well, so they were relaxing at home for the day watching TV. I still wonder what I'd seen, as it was definitely their car, number plate, and Mum was even wearing her distinctive raincoat. Even if they were pulling a prank on me, there is no way they would have gotten home before me, as there is no road they could have slipped down to beat me to the house. Today I was on my way to pick my kids up from my parents, who watch them while I'm at work. And about halfway through the drive, I called my mum to tell her to have the kids ready to go, because the visibility was getting bad, and I didn't want to spend much time there before it became too unsafe. I got to a turn I usually take, and I was stuck in the left-hand lane for several rotations because the light was broken and never turned green. Frustrated, I got back onto the main road and started mindlessly driving towards the next route I could take. I was focusing on the road immediately in front of me and listening to an audiobook and driving straight for a while, until I realized nothing looked like it should for where I thought. I thought I must have been driving mindlessly and overshot the turn, but whilst looking for a point of reference, the snow visibility had gotten considerably more clear, and I was back where I was, just before the light with the broken turn signal. I was so freaked out that I just kept driving past that light to the next route to my parents' house, and this time I paid extra attention and made it to pick up my kids. When I arrived, my mum asked what had taken me so long, and I told her I was unsure, then told her what had happened. She was freaked out, then prayed for me before I left with my kids. On my way home, I was sure to check all the lights to see if any were broken, and none seemed to be, and everything since has been fine. The only conclusion I can come to was that the snow visibility was so bad that I just got incredibly confused and tried to turn on a much earlier route, and the light was fixed by the time I'd gotten back, or God literally moved me backwards through space to protect me from something. In either case, I will look at it as a blessing. I still can't quite account for why it took me so long though. I should have arrived sooner, even in a snowstorm. I have no lapse in memory and can even recall which parts of the audiobook I was at and when, including the first and second times I'd arrived at the same street and everything in between. Last weekend, I took a trip from my birthday with my partner to a small mountain town in Colorado. We're from Denver, so we drive in the mountains a lot, and I'm fairly accustomed to it, so we decided to take a nice drive and enjoy the scenery. If you've ever been to Colorado, you know that the weather can change quickly in the mountains. We were driving on Highway 285 through a valley that was dry with no snow, and had to pass through a tunnel on the slope up to exit the valley. The tunnel slightly sloped upwards, and there was some snow and precipitation on the other side of it, outside of the valley. Continuing on, we reached the peak of that set of mountains and went through a second tunnel, which was quite icy. The tunnels in this stretch of land are very long and windy because they cut through the mountains, and it was really icy and made my partner and myself nervous to be driving right then, especially with the curves. After passing through the second icy tunnel, we immediately started going downhill into another valley that was getting hit pretty hard by a snowstorm. At this point, we both made a comment about how we were nervous we would have to go back uphill in all of this snow, so I took the next possible turn off and turned around to head back to our Airbnb. I'd been riding the brakes the whole way down the mountain, basically just sliding towards where I wanted to go and hoping no animals jumped out in front of us. And at this point we had probably driven about half a mile, all downhill, into the base of this valley. We ended up turning around in a ski area parking lot, so I know we were at the base of the valley, because we were at the base of the ski lifts. Logically, we had driven downhill to get into the base of the valley, and both my partner and I have vivid memories of driving downhill and being notably nervous about backtracking in the snow. I turned our car around specifically because we were going downhill too much, and we were dreading the difficulties we might face going back up. However, here is where we experienced the glitch. After I turned around at the ski area parking lot, we headed back towards our Airbnb. We both were holding our breath because the snow was heavy, roads were slick, and we were about to go up a slippery mountain. But I never had to take my foot off the brake. Again, while I rode the brakes, the entire way into the valley before turning around. I rode my brakes the entire way back to the icy tunnel. When I say I rode my brakes, I mean I had to literally pump my brakes to stop from sliding out on the steep, slippery mountainside. I didn't touch the gas pedal once. When we got to the icy tunnel and knew we'd somehow gotten up the mountain by going downhill, we both audibly questioned if this was the correct tunnel. Did we go the wrong way? Was this the right tunnel? Have we been going downhill the whole time? No, really, we were going downhill. Why are we still going downhill? We were both absolutely shocked. There was no doubt we went downhill in both directions. We both were so nervous about our circumstances because we were sliding down a mountain into a valley. We also turned around at a ski lift area, which are at the bases of the mountain. It had to be downhill to get there. But when we left the valley, we just slid back out on another downslope. Sure enough, a short distance later, we went through the first tunnel and were back in our original valley. We were at our Airbnb in no time, and most definitely didn't take a wrong turn. Honestly, we were both pretty grateful for it. The glitch. It was a scary situation that came on us fast. We feared being stuck at the bottom of a snowy valley, but made it home easily on a glitch. So this happened 2 days ago, and no one in my friend group can help me figure out a logical explanation, so I was told to go to Reddit, and here I am. I work in a building with a bunch of different business offices, and we share a communal restroom outside in the common area. We can only get in with the key, and only employees from the various offices have them. I was walking to the women's restroom the other day, and another lady was already ahead of me going towards it too. She had on business attire and black pointy heels, and she opened the women's restroom door, then pushes it so I could grab the door before it closed. I said thanks, and she was still ahead of me. Now the restroom only has 3 stalls, 2 small ones and 1 large on the far right. I saw her go into the middle stall, and I stood for a second and decided to just take the other small stall on the far left. So now the only stall available was the large stall on the far right. Now the doors and walls don't reach all the way to the floor, so you can see the feet of people next to you and walking past. I sat down then and saw the lady's black heels next to me. They were like a particularly older style, and they just stood out to me. I don't know, I was just aware of what they looked like. She was already in the middle of her bathroom business, and I turned to the other side to grab some toilet paper. Then I heard someone else enter the restroom, and saw a pair of brown heels walk across in front of my door and go into the stall next to me, right where I had just seen the black heels literally moments ago. It caught me completely off guard. I thought that maybe 2 people were having some kind of meeting in the restroom, if you know what I mean. But no, I could only see the brown heels now and was very confused because this all happened in the matter of seconds. I finished up quickly, and when I stepped outside, I saw that both the small and large stalls were occupied. I bent down to see a black pair of heels in the large stall and the brown pair in the stall next to me. I was panicking now, because I know for a fact that the black pair were in the stall next to me. This all happened in just a few moments. The lady who had the black heels was like peeing when the other lady walked in, so I don't understand how she suddenly flew into the large stall. I stood in the sink area for a second and was contemplating maybe asking these women what kind of prank they were pulling. But I already felt crazy, so I didn't want to scare 2 random women with what I'd just seen. I also had this weird sensation that I'd seen something I wasn't supposed to. The only way I can explain it is like when you get caught doing something wrong. I had goosebumps, and I honestly felt like something had dropped to the pit of my stomach. Now before people say, maybe she was out of toilet paper, etc., these restrooms get stocked every morning, and I don't think I've ever seen a stall run out of it in the last 5 years that I've been working here. Another explanation I've heard is that maybe I just hadn't noticed her change stalls, which could have been the case if she hadn't have been the first to enter there. She was already in the middle of her business by the time I sat down myself. Again, all this happened in the matter of moments, and the brown heels walked in seconds after we had entered our stalls. I can't explain it, and I don't know what I saw. I was fully aware and conscious of my surroundings, and I didn't even have my phone on me, so it's not like I was distracted. I had slept enough, I'd had my coffee, and I know it sounds crazy, but that's why I'm posting it here. Hey, thanks for listening. I hope you enjoyed my video. And if you did, could you please give me virtual hugs by subscribing and clicking that notifications button. I also have a Patreon page and YouTube channel membership if you'd like to support me further. Thank you again for being here. Keep being creepy.